Hey everybody, really excited. We are back with another DAC Talk and very, very cool opportunity this week. We've got my friend Meiko Seymour who is joining us as we talk about the quickest way to achieve success in whatever it is you're doing. If it's your business or if it's your schooling or if it's building your market, whatever it is, there is one simple thing that you need to grab onto that will escalate you to achieving success very quickly. So we're going to talk about that. But Meiko, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. I'm so excited to be here tonight.
Dude, I'm super stoked to have you. I know last week I was like, hey, would you be up for hopping on DAC Talk with me? And we talked a little bit about what a good topic would be. And I know that you're in the middle of kind of starting out your online business. You've been doing a lot of website building and kind of platform building for the last, well, how long would you say that you've been kind of building that?
Yeah, I feel like really I've been building that over the last year, but really amped it up over probably the last couple of months, the end of 2014 coming into this year.
Very cool. So tell me just a little bit about, just your MO, the way you see the world, kind of, who you are a little bit so people who are watching, know who this other guy is.
Yeah. Well, like Dave said, my name is Meiko, and my big thing is being able to draw out of people their passions and get them to look at that passion in a perspective where that passion can move them forward in different dreams and different aspirations that they have, to where it affects their community or their tribe. We talk about that a lot in certain chat or Twitter chats and things like that. But that's my drive. I'm all about trying to draw out those things out of people, and so last year I began this quest. That's how I put it. I began this quest to try to develop a system, try to develop a consulting system, if you will, to get people to realize what they have within them naturally, and also get them from where they are right now to where they want to be. And so I'm all about that. I'm all about forward movement and things like that. And so I spend a lot of time just dreaming with people, listening to people, trying to get on their trying to join them on their soapbox, if you will, to kind of just elevate the things that they're wanting to do. I'm a people person. I love stories. I love people stories. I love anything dealing with trying to move your community forward. So that's what I'm all about, and that's what my business is all about. And so we launched it. I actually launched it last year. And now I'm in this, and we'll talk about this tonight. Now I'm in this phase where I just feel like I'm learning so much, and I'm trying to implement all the things that I'm learning, and to move the business forward.
That's awesome, man. Okay, so you're talking about moving people forward. How are the New Orleans Saints going to move forward next year?
Oh my gosh!
Because you're a Saints fan, aren't you?
I am a Saints fan. Sometimes you got to go through a season where it's just hard and it doesn't work out. So that you can remember that you're not perfect. You're not a bunch of gods on the field. You've got to be humbled. And so I think that's what happened to us this season, and I look forward to the changes that are going to happen. Over the next couple of months, and then next season we're going to be on the ball, and I really expect us to be at that championship.
Yeah, well, we'll see what the Cardinals have to say about that. So if you guys are watching us, tonight and you want to interact with us, you can use the hashtag DACTalk. I didn't have a chance. Well, I guess I shouldn't say I didn't have a chance. I forgot to get one created for Meiko. So Meiko, I hope you will forgive me for that Google Hangout sin, because I am very, very sorry about that. But you can see mine right here. I've got the DAC Talk hashtag going on right here. You can interact with us on Twitter. We'd love to hear your questions. We'd love to hear your comments. But really what we're going to be talking about tonight is this idea of achieving success. And ultimately it comes down to the idea that you've always got to be learning. And originally I was going to title this DAC Talk, Suck Up Your Pride and Learn, because I think a lot of times we'll look at, what we're doing, and we'll kind of look at it with self-satisfaction. And I know that maybe not all the time we deal with the issue of, yeah, I'm happy with where I'm at and I'm happy with everything that I've done. A lot of times we come at it from the other angle of being a little bit like, man, how do I raise my game to be more like this person, or how do I achieve this result that I see somebody else doing? But there's also another side of that where it's like, no, like, regardless if you think you've arrived or regardless if you're trying to achieve that next level, it all comes down to learning, and it all comes down to going out and educating yourself and becoming well acquainted with whatever it is that you're trying to grow in. And so in this business, in this online business world, I feel like there's always something that I'm trying to learn, and I feel like there's always something that I see. It's like, man, I didn't even know that. I didn't even know you could do that, or I didn't even know that existed. And so, like, just my most recent one that I could think of, I guess. I don't know if it's my most recent, but it's the one that I'm thinking of right now. I spent all this time learning about Twitter, and I spent all this time, putting in to create a Twitter training. And as I was getting close to the end, someone, sent me a tweet saying, "Hey, do you know much about Twitter cards?" And like, I was like, I don't know what Twitter cards are. I don't know how they work. So like the next week, I just spent time reading about Twitter cards, implementing for my site, trying to figure out, what they mean for me. And so it's just this idea of always learning. So Meiko, I just want to start off right off the bat. Like, I think everybody has a different method of learning. I did not go to college. Sitting in a college classroom, listening to someone give a dissertation, like, that's just not how I process things.
Yeah.
I'll get into how I process things, but how have you found that you've been most effective learning over the years, and what are some of the methods that you really try to lean into when it comes to, hey, when I'm in this learning mode, here's how I try to feed myself?
Yeah. The type of person that I am, I learn via experiences, and I also learn by observations. I was actually just talking to a friend earlier today that I will sit back and just watch. I love just watching what people are doing, and a lot of times what ends up happening is I become very much so inspired by what they're doing because I'm watching, and then I start to investigate. Why are they doing the things that they're doing? Where are they doing those things? And is it working out? And so I will, for example, the reason I found you, with communications is I was really just looking for, okay, who's in communications right now, and who has struggled like I have. I'm a communications director. I always say I do that on the side, but that is my full-time job. But I was looking for, okay, who's in this kind of realm, in this space, and what are they doing to manage that space and to manage the things, that everyday things that come along with this job. And so I found you, and so all of a sudden, I've told you this before, all of a sudden I spent a weekend literally just reading every single blog that you posted at that time. And that's kind of the way that I do it. I just, I want to feel that someone else has, kind of struggled in the same way that I have, and then I just sit back and I watch what it is that they've done to kind of get out of that space. And so really it comes in various forms. I'll listen to podcasts, I'll read books, TV shows. I love TV shows, and I say that all the time, but I learn so much from TV shows. Silly, but really, The West Wing is my show. I love The West Wing. TJ Craig is incredible. She's her character is the press secretary on the show, and so I watch how she interacts and how she does that job. I know it's not real life, but they're pulling from real life with some drama, and I love it.
Yeah.
But it really helped me when it comes to being a communications director. Even though it's a script, I'm still pulling things from that. So I do that. I learn from various brands. So right now I'm really into what Delta Airlines is doing, what Southwest Airlines is doing on Instagram. I'm just watching. I'm watching what they put out. I'm watching what kind of responses they're getting. And am I sitting in the classroom with a Delta executive? No, I'm literally looking at my phone, looking at my Instagram feed, and watching as they post, when they post, and what they post about, and what story they're telling with their posts. So I tend to learn best kind of by sitting back and watching. It's very rare that you know, I'll say this: I love online kind of conferences and things like that. But you know, they come few and far between, and so I have to figure out in the space between conferences or in the space between when I can sit down with an expert, what am I going to do to enrich myself in order to succeed? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Totally. I totally
Yeah.
get that. So it's interesting that you brought up the idea of watching people, because I
Yeah.
didn't necessarily equate this with what I'm about to say. I was listening. I was thinking about something else, thinking that you were meaning something else. But as you were talking, I realized that that's kind of what I did. So, like I said, like I didn't go to school. Like I didn't go to college.
Right.
And so, my philosophy on college ultimately is that if you need a college degree to get the job that you want to get, like a doctor, lawyer, well, actually, you don't have to have a college degree to be a lawyer, but you get what I'm saying. Like, if you need that education and you need what college offers, like, you got to go after it. But if you don't, if what you want to do doesn't require a college degree, the only thing a college degree, really helps you with is kind of, it advocates that you are able to learn in a particular way for a particular specified period of time. Like, you know how to learn and you know how to achieve something. And I don't mean to belittle it that way. That's just a gross way of putting it. So when I decided not to go to college, I looked at it like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to surround myself with people who I admire. I'm going to surround myself with people who do the things that I want to do, with people who have become the person that I'd hope to become one day, at least in different aspects. And so what I wound up doing, I was very involved in my church when I was growing up, and so I found myself kind of just following after different people over a period of time. And so I'd watch, this person who I was following this year, I was volunteering for them or whatever. I'd be like, I really like what he does here. I don't like what he does here. I'm going to be like him like this, and I'm going to try to improve this area right here. Not to say like, oh, he's a bad guy or whatnot. It's just like everybody's got strengths and weaknesses, and I'm sure there's somebody looking at me doing the same thing. And so then the next year I'd be following around someone else. I'd be like, man, she does that so well. I want to be just like her in that way. I want to be able to handle difficult situations as well as she does. But I also realized that she falls a little short here in having patience with people. And so I just kind of like would weigh and measure. And so over the course of time, I just followed her. I made myself useful and available to people who I saw something that I could get out of. Like, yes, I was giving my time and serving them in exchange for being able to have more intimate time with them. And I think that still happens to some extent. I find people on Twitter and I'll kind of like creep around them and I'll like affirm what they say. And eventually, one guy who had no reason to give me any time on his schedule but gave me an hour is my buddy Jonathan Milligan. And he's just been one of those guys who I creeped for a while, and I commented on his blog, and I replied to all of his emails, and I was retweeting him and replying to him. And eventually when I said, hey, I've got a question for you about masterminds, he's like, yeah, let's schedule a time. And so it was just one of those deals where that's just a good representation of, over the years, I found people and I've kind of like modeled my life after them based upon the best that they have to offer. I guess that's what it comes down to. I like looking at the best of what people have to offer and say, how do I own that for myself? Like, how do I make that mine? Does that make sense what I'm saying there? Yeah.
And I'm also hearing, and I just want to make sure that I'm clear on what you're saying. You're saying that it is absolutely okay to be a creeper on is that right?
Yeah, it's absolutely okay to be a creeper, just not a creepy creeper.
Yeah, sure. Hey, I kind of want to piggyback off of that. I also feel like it's really important for us to be well-rounded learners. So, I mentioned, and I'm sure we're going to talk about this a little bit later on, but I mentioned following Delta and following American Airlines and Southwest Airlines, things like that. Am I in the airline industry? I'm not. Am I in a customer service kind of industry? Absolutely. So I guess my point would be is I'm not just following people, or I'm not just reading books or watching movies or TV shows that have to do specifically with my genre, or with my specific profession, but really I'm trying to gain knowledge and wisdom from all facets, because I'm probably going to deal with, especially in consulting and in creative ministries and things like that, I'm probably going to deal with people from all spectrums, right? I'm gonna deal with people who may, you know, when it comes to Delta, for example, Delta tends to be a higher priced airline versus Southwest. It's a low cost, low fare airline, and so people will gravitate more towards Southwest. One, because it's cheaper, and they advertise themselves as the fun airline, right? So maybe I'm dealing with someone that's just really kind of kooky and fun and just, you know, bouncing off the wall, versus more of a rigid type that might, you know, gravitate towards an American Airlines or a Delta Airlines. And so I want to gain that kind of perspective to where Delta, whenever they're Instagramming or they're tweeting, and I don't work for any of these companies, I know I'm mentioning them a lot, but you know, they're when you watch them, their stuff tends to be more linear, more structured. When you watch things from like Southwest Airlines, it's fun. You know, you wanna party just on their Instagram feed. So I feel like it's really important to be a well-rounded learner. Have a few different avenues of where you're pulling information from and wisdom from. Have a few different people, you know, from different sectors, right? So that you can gain knowledge in areas where you may not think it's going to be advantageous to have, but I guarantee you, you're gonna come across a client where you're gonna think back to something that you weren't necessarily kind of itching to get that information, but thank God that you have it, right? Because now you're dealing with somebody that you needed to have that information on.
Absolutely. You know, one of my buddies who I worked with several years ago, he's an extremely successful singer, won all sorts of awards and whatnot. And the reason why that's important is because that just shows, you know, he's mingled in a lot of different circles. He's been around a lot of different people. He's toured, you know, the entire globe doing music stuff, which means he's interacted with people of all different cultures, people of all different lifestyles, people of all different backgrounds and experiences and histories. Well, anyways, when he gave that lifestyle up and he came and started to work, you know, where I was working, you know, within the first couple weeks, I was like, man, this guy's hilarious. He always has something like a perfect, witty, perfectly timed, perfect context, witty comment to go at everything. And like I asked him one day, I was like how is it that you're so funny? Like, what is it that you do? Like, how do I become funny like that? And you know, this was like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. And not to say that, you know, that I was super young when I was 27 years old, 28 years old, but I mean, when you're in your 20s, every year is a much greater growth experience than maybe when you're, you know, in your 50s or 60s. Like, you still grow, but everything is still for the first time in so many respects. And so, you know, I couldn't figure it out. Why was he so funny? Why was he so on top of every situation? And what I realized is it's a lot of what you were saying. Like, he was he accumulated all of his learning, all of his knowledge, all of experiences in a very wide array of context. He didn't limit himself to just interacting with people in the music field. He interacted with people from just about any type of lifestyle and background you could think of. And so what I kind of noticed, I mean, I'm not saying that I'm like the funny guy or anything, but I enjoy, you know, bringing laughter and bringing joy to people. And so what I found is, as I've gotten older, I haven't like tried to be funny or whatnot, but I found that, you know, my education and just life and cultural events and just, you know, what happens in life, I found that every year I have a little bit more to offer when it comes to witty comments and stuff, just because, you know, every year of living, you know, we add different things to our collection of who we are, what makes us up, our personality DNA, things like that. So I totally get that. Now, you know, we were talking. I can't remember if you said pick your brain, or the phrase, you know, pick your brain or something like that. But you did say, you know, going on, you know, like my website or anybody else's website and just kind of looking at everything. And one thing I wrote down, one of the biggest places I found that I can get expert advice, expert commentary, really get the best that somebody has to offer is by scouring their blogs. And so I've got several people who I continually read because I believe firmly that, if anybody is serious about blogging and if anybody is serious about building a website where they're continually adding new content, you are going to get their best. Like when you read the blogs that people put out there, they are sweating over these things, man. Like they are really laboring to produce a great quality piece of content. And so, if somebody's writing about, today I did a webinar over email, right? So let's just use me as an example. Today I did a webinar over all about email, and it was absolutely free. Well, if somebody ever wanted to ask me questions about email, the best place to do it is when I'm offering up that content and saying, hey, I've probably spent 5 hours putting that webinar together. I've spent 5 hours thinking about this one thing, and now I want to share that with you. And so I think one of the biggest underrated places to gain education, at least continually, is by following specific people who really interest us and following their blog and every single post that they do, and then building on that, the comment section, man. People love it when you comment on their blog. And so if there's somebody that you follow and you want to ask them a question, you may not be able to secure a 15, 20-minute Skype with them, but you can ask the question on their blog, and they're probably going to get back to you because they have something at stake. Getting back to you provides value to them because it shows that they're listening. So, so that's another place I found that I really like to target in on who I want to learn from, and then, I guess let's just say it again, creep on them by reading their blog and using the comments. So, is that something that you've pursued in the past? Do you have blogs that you continually follow, or what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I agree with you. I, obviously, I follow, I'll just mention two right now, and these are kind of corporate blogs, but I love Hootsuite. The blogs that they send out pretty much, I think it's every day or every other day, and then Buffer, both of those companies, they send out some really great stuff as far as social media is concerned. One of them, I can't remember right now, but one of them sent something out either last night or this morning, and it was everything that you need for social media, to set up a social media plan. And just all of these downloadable just content, and absolutely free, and it was fantastic. I can't remember who did it, but just all of their emails that come in every single day or every other day, I am glued and I am reading those things. And I also, obviously, I follow you. I follow everything that Carissa Moore does. She is fantastic. House of Bliss, if you haven't been there, you need to go there. Just everything dealing with copy, and I feel like she has a strange kind of talent to take words, right? Just ordinary words, and make them come to life so that you can share your passion and what you're dreaming about. And so I'm all over her blog right now. Also, there is one more. I am, and Dave, I think that you're a person who loves this guy as well, but I am all over Gary Vaynerchuk and everything that he's putting out, whether that's on Medium, his own website, his podcast, things like that. I'm all over that stuff. I feel like his podcasts, his blogs, his Medium posts are gold. And so whenever he comes out with something, I'm just jumping and just trying to implement all of that wisdom that he's giving out for free, basically, and trying to implement that into what I'm doing. So, what about you? Where do you go?
Yeah, man. The place where I go right now, where I really gravitate towards, is podcasts. I don't know if that's going to come as any surprise to people, but for me, right now my commute is pretty far. I mean, it's like a 15, 20-minute drive, which, I guess for a lot of people that's not far. For me, it's a little bit further than I'm used to. And so that 15 to 20 minutes every single day, if I am not overwhelmed by work and online marketing and just what I do, I will pop on various different podcasts. Some of the ones that I really enjoy listening to, the Flip Lifestyle podcast, I've mentioned it here a couple times. I really like that because of the way Shane and Jocelyn, they talk so personally, and so for me it feels like I've got a partner, kind of coaching me along. It doesn't feel like they're talking to a bunch of people. It really talks like they're speaking directly to me, and I really value that a lot. I feel like they're really trying to add a lot of resources for guys like me to use, so I love that. Another one that I listen to a lot is I love Pat Flynn, because the guy is incredibly transparent about what has worked for him, what hasn't worked for him.
Yeah.
He does a lot of the experimentation for you, and then you can just kind of glean on that. So I listen to the Smart Passive Income blog, or podcast with Pat Flynn. Something that I've actually been doing more recently. I don't know if you ever do these, but people do like online trainings. I'm not talking like webinar, but they put, an entire training online through a portal or through a whole bunch of downloads. Well, what I've been doing is I've been taking all these video downloads and I've been converting them to MP3s, and I've been loading them up into my Amazon Music player. So when I've got my iPhone plugged in my car, I'm actually listening to the training. To the training that I've purchased, because I have a hard time. I don't know if you've ever done that, but you purchase something and then you wind up having a hard time getting through all of it, making the time to get through it.
Yeah.
So that's how have you had that problem?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's like it's really good and it's really attractive, but then you're like, when am I going to have time to sit down for 10 hours?
Right.
It's like 10 hours of goodness, but when do I have 10 hours extra? So
Right.
I put it on my iPhone through the Amazon Music player and I stream it. And here's the big thing that I've loved about doing that. A lot of times I will look at that as like, I go through it and then I check it off. But what I'm starting to do is I'm actually starting to look at it as more of hey, I want to put this learning not just inside my head, but I want it to make it into my heart, because I may not need, like you were talking about earlier, I may not need this particular practice or this particular principle right now.
Right.
But if I can internalize it, if I can listen to it and put it on repeat and listen to it 4 or 5 or 6 times over the course of the next month, I'm internalizing it enough to where when I need to kind of resurrect that content, I've already got it there. I don't have to go searching for that training that I had. So I've been doing that with Jeff Walker's the product launch formula thing. I've been going through all the modules over and over and over again, and that's been really, really helpful for me. Were you going to say something?
No. I was going to say that's exactly it. It's like you have this bank of information that you keep depositing into, so that when you do need it, you can go ahead and withdraw it. I love it.
Yeah. Let's see. What are a couple others that I listen to? I love listening to Mike Kim. That would be really, really relevant for this audience. Like if you have never checked out Mike Kim's stuff, it's MikeKim.tv. Actually, I think he got the .com now too. So MikeKim.com. He has a podcast called the Brand You podcast. Now, when you go there, I think the most recent one is actually an interview he conducted with me back in October. He just released it. But if you go back further than the episode that I appeared on, I've been listening to all of them since he launched it, I think in September. He's got a lot of really, really good content on personal branding. And so I just kind of like listen to that over and over. The one that I've been kind of trying to apply a little bit as of late is he has a podcast on how to get testimonials and endorsements when you don't have any clients, and it's just brilliant. It's genius. So I've listened to that a few times. Are there any podcasts that you're listening to right now that you're just really gravitating towards, that you're hanging on to?
Yeah, time right now for me is so fleeting. I feel like I can't get a hold of time. So the one podcast that I am die hard about is the Gary Vaynerchuk's Ask Gary V podcast. And so the reason why I love it is it's always packed full of good stuff, and it's usually about 10 minutes long, which is actually my commute to and from work, so it works out for me to listen to it there. The other thing that I'm actually doing is I'm watching a lot of these kind of lifestyle vlogs that are starting to happen. A lot of bloggers that I'm kind of watching right now are gravitating to doing video blogs on YouTube, and so whenever I do have the chance to do that, usually on a weekend, then I'll kind of watch those things, and kind of helps me a little bit more because and again I don't have a lot of time, but when I do have the time to be able to watch these YouTube videos, I feel like and you kind of said this a little bit earlier, I feel like I'm connecting with that person a little bit more, and I wish that I did have time to do it. But I'm seeing a lot of people move towards doing a lot of vlogging and kind of taking that stuff and moving it to podcasting. So I'm just loving that right now. But Gary Vaynerchuk's Ask Gary V show, I am all about that right now.
Yeah,
In fact, I think the other day I committed to myself that I would go back. I think we're on what, episode 60, 62, 63 or something like that.
It's really, really up there.
Yeah, I think I committed to myself that I'm going to actually go back and just listen to all of them back to back, because when I jumped in, you know, he was just starting this stuff, and so I feel like right now he's kind of like he's in that sweet spot where he knows exactly the information that he wants to put out, and so now it's just really concise and exactly what people need. And so I just want to go all the way back to the beginning and just kind of, like you were saying, listen to it, make sure that it gets into my heart bank, and so then whenever I need to pull some of these things out, I can actually do that.
Heart bank. I'm writing that down. I've never heard it referred to like that, but I really, really like it.
Yeah. Now I know you said earlier that you did the email webinar today. Are there other webinars or online kind of trainings that you do?
Dude, you're reading my mind. I've got some things written down right here. And now there's not necessarily like a webinar or a thing that I do, but what I found is I used to not register for. I would look at my calendar and I wouldn't register for webinars that would come through just because it's like I'm probably going to be busy, or I don't know if I really want to see that. But what I've started to do is when a webinar comes through and it interests me and it's low-hanging fruit, meaning there's not a huge commitment to it, it's about an hour, and it looks like it's going to have good content and not just be a sales pitch, because I'm fine with the sales pitch and I've bought things at the end, but I really want content that I can apply, because as a matter of fact, I just sat in on Ramit Sethi, I will teach you to be rich.com. I just recently sat in on one for his program called Zero to Launch, which I want to do hopefully this year, maybe next, if he offers it again. And I sat in and I was just looking for anything about Ramit and anything that he said that I could use. I knew it was going to be a sales pitch for Zero to Launch, and there wasn't a whole lot of amazing content in it, but I got a chance to actually see, to be honest with you, I got a chance to watch how he did webinars. And so when I did my webinar today, there were a couple things that he did which I tried, and I actually liked the way that it went. So so I was learning stuff that way. But essentially what I've done, and I think I would recommend anybody to do, is whenever I see a webinar come through that looks interesting to me, I'm just going to go ahead and register for two reasons. The first is, you never know, you might be sitting at your desk and it might be the perfect time to open up a webinar and just kind of check out of whatever it is you're doing and check into some learning opportunity. But more than that, almost always they will provide you with a replay, which means you can watch it at your leisure, like whenever you want to. Now, they don't all do that. I don't offer replays. Ramit didn't offer a replay, but a lot of them will offer a replay, and then you can kind of even fast forward through the parts that you want. But I've just started doing that. I think I've been to like 3 webinars this week, and they haven't been great, but I've learned a little bit something from each one. I went to a Facebook ads webinar, and I just got to hear the vernacular of how somebody who's an expert at Facebook ads, I got to hear how he talked about it. I got to hear about what he considers strategic. I didn't hear exactly what his strategies were because that was $2,000, and I don't have that money right now, but I got to hear more, and I'm a little bit more educated than I was, and to be quite honest with you, I learned a few names that I didn't know before. So that's what I've been doing. I mean, I don't know if anybody else does that. You just kind of register for the ones that come through. But I've been doing that, and I've been happy with it. Do you do many webinars online?
I do yours, so for the most part. So there's that. I was going to say real quick, I feel like even if the webinar isn't, it isn't the best, you said you did a few this week, I still feel like if if we're not grasping this whole learning thing, I feel like we're just going to be left behind, right? Like our online business, we're just going to be completely left behind. We should always be searching for new things that we don't know. I love that you're saying, you know, you're learning the vernacular of things when it came to Facebook ads and things like that. I love that. I feel like if we're not doing that, then you know, we're not, and it has nothing really to do with keeping up with, you know, the newest fads or the newest craziness, you know, that things like that. But really, I feel like if you're gonna have clients who trust you and who trust your expertise in areas, in specific areas, then you got to get that expertise. You got to get that stuff in you so that you can provide your clients with a good product or a good service, you know. And so the people that I follow that I'm just hardcore, you know, a big fan of, I'm trusting that they are constantly learning, because when, you know, using you as an example, if you spent a few hours this week in webinars that maybe weren't the best, but you were still learning, and you know, I follow you, and I trust what you're putting out in your blog and on the communicators list and things like that. I know that I'm gonna get, you know, incredible wisdom, incredible knowledge being poured back into me, to where I can then share and implement into my context, into my space. And so I just feel like, I just wanted to say this, I feel like we should always be learning, if not for today, definitely for tomorrow. So I just wanted to say that. One of the, I don't do a lot of webinars, but I just did Bliss Boost.
Yeah, let's hear about that.
Yeah, so incredible. Bliss Boost basically is something that Carissa Moore, she offers from House of Bliss, and it's a week intensive. And when I say intensive, I really mean it is intense. Where she is teaching you.
Did you have to wear a sweatband, like a head sweatband?
Basically, it's the 1980s, you know, like you got the headband, all that. But basically, she's teaching you everything that you need to know about writing good copy, and helping you to make sure that the copy that's on your website or any of, you know, any of your pieces, those things can convert to sales. And so I spent a week in that course, or in that class, and I came out of that class feeling I had really great copy for my website, but I also felt empowered to do what I feel like I want to do the things that, you know, I have on my heart, you know, to help other people achieve their dreams and their goals and things like that. And it's literally a week of trying to figure out, who am I, you know, who am I trying to reach, who am I trying to sell to, and that takes a lot of work, right? But she really walks you through that really, really well, and I feel like she holds your hand, and I needed a lot of hand holding during the week, but she was willing to do that, and those are the things that I love. Those are the things that I gravitate towards, the more human kinds of interaction with people that I'm learning from, and that's what Bliss Boost was all about. And the really cool part about Bliss Boost was, there were others in the classroom, and we all kind of came together and started supporting one another. And so at the end of the week, I have, you know, 6 or 7 others who, you know, I can kind of lean on and bounce ideas off of whenever they come. So I love Bliss Boost. If you ever get a chance to do it, go ahead and do it. And I think she's offering some really cool deals right now. It is a little pricey, but I think right now you can get in by, I think she has a payment plan now that she's implemented, and some really cool add-ons once you do become a part of Bliss Boost. It's fantastic. It's probably the one thing over the last few months that has really helped me to say, you know what, I can do this. I believe in my product. I believe that I have the knowledge to help other people, and that all came from a week's worth of intense an intense look at my copy, an intense look at the words that I'm using on my website. So it was fantastic.
Okay, so let me ask you this. You talk about it being intense. You talk about it being, all-encompassing. I had something written down here. I think for me, the number one way that I have to learn is I have to really go after one thing at a time. One of the problems that I have with conferences, be it online or be it in person, is typically I'm just with such information overload that I feel like I don't know exactly where to start. So I got to the point where it's like I have to pick one thing. Like if I can walk away from a conference and I can pick one thing to implement, I'm going to be in good shape. What are your thoughts on that? Like how did that work? You're learning in such an intense environment, yet maybe you're just geared that way where you can do a whole bunch of octopus things at one time. But like, how did you deal with the intensity yet being very focused?
Yeah, with Bliss Boost specifically, it's set up in a way that you can keep all of the lessons, you keep all of her teachings and things like that, all of the documents. So you keep that, you own that for life. And so going into it, because I knew that it wasn't so pressurized for me to kind of get everything. However, when I use the word intense, it was a lot of information, and so I really had to choose, okay, what's going to work really well for me in my context and in my space and at my level, right? Because even when I'm talking about Gary Vaynerchuk and his podcast and what he's doing with Media, I don't own a media company, and some of the clients that Carissa works with, I'm not as big as those clients that she has. So I really have to take what I'm being taught and scale them either up or down according to my context or according to what it is I'm doing in my business. So I can't take everything that somebody's teaching me and say, okay, yes, good, I got it. It's awesome. I can't do that. I'm not that talented, but I can take certain things and begin to implement those right away. And then I do have this practice where if I'm listening to a blog, if I'm reading a blog, I'm listening to a podcast, things like that, or I'm in a webinar, I do write down. I have this list of things that I want to be able to do. And so I'm a calendar guy. I live by a calendar. And so what I do, I have this thing called a dream calendar. And basically all it is, in 6 months, I want to have had accomplished, X, Y, and Z. And so what ends up happening, whenever I'm watching a webinar or I'm learning something from a blog or teaching or, anything like that, what I'll do is I'll take my notes and then I will drop that either, in Evernote, or I'll drop that in my calendar system and attach it to that dream of where I want to be. And so that's how I kind of get through when there's so much information.
I love that, man. I love that idea of the dream calendar too. I mean, can you talk I think people may want to know exactly, what that looks like. I mean, not too much detail, but can you go into just that much more detail and say what that is and what that process looks like?
Yeah, really simple. It's just a goals thing. It's, in 3 months, I want to have X, Y, and Z done or accomplished, and so I just write that down on the calendar. I really use Asana for this. And I know you guys have talked about Asana a lot here, but so basically I just put it on a calendar and I watch my progress towards those things on the calendar, and I just call it a dream calendar, where I want to be at a certain time during the year.
I love that. Okay, so I was writing down a couple books here because I think it was Beth Ann who said, hey, what about books? I can't remember exactly who said it. It was further down in the feed. A lot of activity tonight, so thanks, guys, so much for talking with us with the hashtag DAC Talk. I really love hearing from you. Couple books now. June, did I just send you Platform? How are you liking Platform? Like, what are you learning out of Platform? Because that's one of the books that I have really, really enjoyed reading. Another book that I enjoyed getting through was From Good to Great by Jim Collins. It's a little bit more of a corporate book, but it has a lot of really, really great principles. So that one's been a huge help for me. Have you read that one, Meiko?
Yeah, I have. I was just internally smacking my hand on my forehead because every single time that I watch a DAC talk, I always say to myself, I need to get platform. I think I text messaged this to you, but I need to get platform. I hear so much about it, and I still have yet to get it.
Oh, it's absolutely fantastic, man. I mean, June, chime in. I mean, are you loving it or what? So Platform, that's one that I think is a definite must-read. From Good to Great is another one. Another one, a little lesser-known book, at least I think it is. I'd never heard of it until my friend told me, but it's called The $100 Startup. Now, what I really love about that, and you know, I don't think it plays into your concept of the dream book, but I think it plays into kind of helping people realize what their dreams are and kind of start to articulate them, is basically the guy goes through and you know, if somebody says, I love doing this with people too, but, and you probably do too after hearing you speak a little bit more, but I love that he goes through and essentially, well, let me back up. What I like doing is somebody would be like, oh, well, I could never start a business doing what I love. And I'd be like, well, what is it that you love to do? Oh, I love to travel. And so then I immediately, like my entrepreneur mind turns on, and I'm thinking to myself, you could totally make a business traveling. Like, you'd have to get a little bit of money to get those first few tickets, but if you could start a travel website, if you could start, you know, listing all the best places to go, if you could start, you know, planning different trips for people, saying, hey, if you're going to make this trip, do this, and then you get a kickback from the people who book that particular trip. You know, all these different things, my mind just starts spinning and turning, and that's what the $100 startup is. I love giving it to dreamers because, you know, a lot of times dreamers are so down on their dream. Like, I think I talked about this in a past DAC talk, but like we get beat up on our dreams so often. Like, we're told to be realistic, or we're told to have a backup plan, or we're told to, you know, think of something that would actually make money. And the truth is, man, is I believe in the human spirit. I mean, that derives from my faith, and, you know, I'm a Christian, and I believe in Jesus and everything like that. But, you know, regardless of where your faith stance is, I mean, I think we can all agree that the human spirit is powerful, and that the human spirit, that there is so much potential that lies within each of us, but we just get pressed down and beat down so much when we're growing up. And just, you know, I think I said in a DAC talk, the reason why, you know, I'm not an NBA basketball player isn't because, you know, I'm 5'9" and, you know, grew up in, you know, the suburbs of Phoenix. The reason I'm not an NBA basketball player is because, you know, I had a whole bunch of people, you know, telling me that it was never going to happen. So, you know, maybe it's because I'm 5'9", but the genesis, the root of why I'm not an NBA basketball player is because I was told to be more realistic, and people didn't want to say, you know what, you can do it. Like, how can we help you make it happen? And so I love the book, The $100 Startup, because it talks about, like, let's make these dreams happen. Like, whatever it is, like, let's make it happen. What are some of your faves?
Yeah, I actually brought this one out. This is called The X and Y of Buy by Elizabeth Pace, and I love this. I got this a couple of years ago, and it talks about, you know, the psyche of the genders, and it's incredible, especially in my context. I want to know, you know, who's coming into the room, who's coming into the conversation, who's coming into the space, and how can I reach the areas where I can inspire them. You know, I really want to get to that. And so that's what the X and Y of buy is. It's the why would a specific gender buy your product, and how do you go about reaching them. The other one is QBQ, the question behind the question, and it's by John G. Miller. It's kind of it's a corporate book, but it's basically talking about what is it behind the words that people are using. And so since I do a lot of consulting, I want to know, you know, in a conversation, you're saying certain things and you're meaning certain things. I want to get behind the things that you're actually saying. So those are two of my favorite books. You know, I do a lot of leadership, you know, things, and so I read a lot of leadership books, but those are probably my two favorite books right now.
That's cool. You know, there's a phrase out there. It says leaders are readers, and I hate reading, man. Like I absolutely hate reading. It just I don't know if I have dyslexia, but I think I do, and it just gets all up in my head, man. The words get jumbled, and it takes me so long. Like my wife will be reading, and I'll be reading, and she'll be turning pages a lot faster than I'm turning pages. I just feel terrible. So I do a lot of audiobooks. I do read on the Kindle. I got the Kindle app on my iPad. But you know, a couple other books that I have. I brought up my Audible account here. I want to get to The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. I know Mike Kim recommends that one a lot. Have you read that one?
So good, so good.
I need to get that one. Entree Leadership by Dave Ramsey is one that I really want to get through. There's one by a guy named Charles Lee. I met him. His book is called Good Idea, Now What? And so it's kind of like the engineering process and how you move ideas into execution. But dude, the man who reads this book, oh, he's depressing. Like his voice is killing me. So that might be a few years before I get through that. I probably have to go deaf, you know, partially before I can get through it. But those are just a few of the ones that I really like. Now I want to get to a question that Andrew Wheeler just pushed through. He asked, he says, how do you get people to trust your opinions and advice or product when you're just beginning your business? And I think that's a great, great question. Now, Andrew, I don't know if you were listening when I started talking about Mike Kim and his podcast, the Brand You podcast, but he speaks directly to this. And so I'll just repeat a couple of the ones that I remember. One thing that Mike would do is a really smart idea, and sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But what he would do is whatever product or service it was he was trying to sell, this one being online website, you know, kind of upgrading, making your website, you know, marketable and better than what it is, better words, things like that. He would actually go to companies that he would want to work with, and unsolicited, he would go and do a complete breakdown of what they could be improving on their website, and he would deliver that to them and basically say, hey, I just want to let you know, like I took a couple hours to go through and write up a proposal of, you know, some easy wins that you could be doing in order to improve your website. And he says most of the time it didn't turn into anything. A lot of the time he'd never hear back, but sometimes he would hear back from people and they'd be incredibly grateful and they'd really appreciate it. And then he's on their radar. And then he's, you know, he's getting more notice. He's being noticed. I'm trying to think of the wording, but he's then noticed by some people who he would like to work with. So that's one thing that he did. Another thing that he did is, even if you can't have somebody provide a testimonial for you in regards to that exact service or product, what you can do is you can get people to provide testimonials for your character, for your work ethic, for the expertise that they have seen in you, maybe not directly related to a product that they haven't used, but for an expertise, and you can use those. And so that's what I actually wound up doing at the very beginning with the communicators list. Is I had people just talk about, you know, interactions that I had had with them. I had actually Meiko and I, we did a one-on-one where we talked about his overall strategy at his job, his communication strategy. And when I was done with that, I did it for free, and I was just like, hey man, would you mind providing me a testimony just saying what value our time together brought? It doesn't matter that he didn't pay me for it. It doesn't matter that I didn't get paid, because the value is still there. So there's a couple ideas. Meiko, do you have any things that you've heard or anything you've done in that area?
Yeah, you know, I agree with that stuff. I believe in providing value, just in every space that you have, just providing value. And in my context, and this is specifically I'm speaking from my context when I say this. When I'm able to sit down with someone or do a Google Hangout with someone or Skype session, I'm able to ask them questions that lead to them telling me their heart, you know, what they really care about, and I'm investing that time not by sharing and not by talking the entire time, but by just listening and understanding what it is that they're saying. And so, you know, I would call that I'm building this relationship with them. And so what ends up happening is, because they know that I'm listening to their heart and I'm listening to what they're trying to communicate, when I do begin to share with them some of my thoughts or some of my ideas, or begin to communicate strategy to achieve their goals, they begin to trust that a little bit more because I did invest that time of just sitting back and listening. And you can do that. You can also do that. Let's take Twitter, for example. You can do that by just scouring your timeline, right? Or your Twitter feed, scouring the people that are following you. Look at what they're talking about. Krista talks about this a lot in Bliss Boost. Look at what they're talking about. Look at your tribe. What do they value? What are they laughing at? What are they watching right now? You know, what do they do on the weekends? And then begin to talk to them, begin to interact with them. And the more you build that kind of relationship, I feel like the more you're able to speak into things, and you can gain that influence with that person. I really do believe that when you have relationships with people, you have more authority to speak into their space, to speak into the things that they're wanting to do, because you have that relationship with them. I'll tell you this story really quick. I was doing something the other day, and somebody sent me a tweet and was talking about, you know, one of my products, and it hurt my heart, because I was thinking, oh gosh, man, I worked so hard on this, you know, and that person was trying to help me out, but because I didn't have a relationship with that person, it came across so harsh, you know, and that person didn't mean anything by it, but because we didn't have that relationship, it was hard for me to swallow. Now, had we built that relationship and had, you know, I've been able to talk with that person about, you know, the things that I'm passionate about, and they then said what they said, then I would be more apt to kind of take what they're saying to me and include that in what I want to do. And so that's just an example of, you know, if you build relationship, if you provide value, constantly provide value, then I feel like you gain influence that way. And then to always show that you're growing too, right? And I do this a lot. I tell people this a lot. I fail a lot, and I feel like my failures make me human.
Yeah.
And it's a weird kind of paradox. People I don't know, they trust a little bit more knowing that you fail. You know, you're not just this person that's you know, successful at every single thing that you do, but when you fail, for some reason, that gives you a little more clout. I feel like that gives you a little bit more something to stand on, because you're willing to go out there, one, and try something, right? You're not just always, you know, watching someone else teach you how to do things or researching and things like that, but you're able to go out there and try something, and it doesn't always work out. And so when I'm really straightforward about that, and when I'm really transparent about that, people tend to trust that a little bit more, and I'm able to have influence in that space.
Yeah. Yeah, the failure thing, I dig that, man. I can't, man, I do so many different like conversations with people. I can't remember if I said it on DAC Talk or somewhere else, but I'll repeat it again because people either one, forgot, or two, haven't heard it. But when I went to Product Launch Formula Live, PLF Live, out here in Scottsdale with Jeff Walker, they had, he was, do you remember the show Heroes on NBC? I think they're bringing it back.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so in the second season there was the Puppet Master, and
Yep.
he had the ability to control. He controlled what people were doing, and so the Claire and her mom her birth mom were in this weird house of puppets, and he had them under his control, and so whatever he did, they did, and so that guy was actually at PLF. He is a PLF student. And so they brought him up on stage to kind of share on stage presence and how to project yourself and things like that. And it was probably the second biggest takeaway for me at the conference. And what he was talking about is people were asking questions like, is it okay for me to record my videos for my website, but then like cut them up and chop them up and things like that? And is it okay for me to speak for 5 minutes and then cut and then speak for another 5 minutes? And just kind of asking all these questions like, what do I do if I mess up, or should I do voice, all this stuff. And he just cut straight to the chase, and he goes, don't cover up your mistakes. He's like, yeah, I mean, be excellent, go after excellence, but don't cover up your mistakes. What if we were talking here right now, just the two of us? Like, what if we were talking and you fumbled over your words? What would you do? you would recover. You would get your
Right.
thoughts straight, you would recover, and you'd continue on. Do that when you're communicating with people online. It makes you real.
Hmm.
People won't judge you for it as long as you know what you're talking about. And
Right.
it's actually interesting. You know, I try to do that, but there was one instance. I spoke at an online conference last month in January, and so I had to submit my talk ahead of time. And so you know, I had 7 parts to my talk, and so I'm going through all 7 parts. And I get to one particular part, and I say, well, let me go ahead and illustrate this for you. Let me say, what if I, and I paused, and I said, you know what? I don't know why I was just about to make something up. Let me give you a real example. And I didn't cut that out because I thought to myself, I was like, I don't, you know, that's really who I was. That's who I was in the moment. That wasn't me falling flat on my face. That was me trying to be helpful, and I found a better way to be helpful. So I really like that idea of failure, and I think owning your failure, and quite honestly, like some of my failures haven't really been failures. They've been failures to live up to a standard somebody else set for themselves, but
Yeah.
it's not a
Right.
failure that I set up for myself. You know, as a matter of fact, it was me leaning into who I was. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, you and I kind of talked about this a couple of weeks ago. There have been some things here recently in the last month, and I'll just be transparent here, where in my role as communications director, it hasn't really gone very well with some of the things that we've been printing and things like that with banners and things like that. But um, they haven't turned out the way that I wanted them to turn out, and a lot of money had been spent on those things. And what I found was, and this is going to lead me to a question that I have for you, Dave. Actually, what I found was I could either just kind of wallow, just kind of sit in the fact that, hey, these things didn't turn out the way that I would want them to have turned out, or I can take those things, those mistakes, and figure out why did these things happen, you know? And so what
Yeah.
I've been doing over the last couple of weeks was, okay, here's the mistake, here's what happened, and now let me figure out a system, let me figure out a structure so that that does not happen again. And
Yeah.
had that failure, I guess, had that mistake not happen, I don't think I would be where I am today, which is now I have a few systems and a few processes in place that ultimately needed to be in place. I just never knew it.
Yeah.
And so now I'm able to kind of, I'm actually able to move forward, and I'm able to move almost at a faster pace because I've set
Huh.
up
Yeah.
systems. I'm no longer guessing. You know what I'm saying? And
Oh, yeah,
so
totally.
my question to you is, how do you recover when there has been a mistake or where things didn't turn out the way that you've wanted them to turn out?
Ah, man, that's a really great question. Gosh, it's easier for me to recover when it has to do with me, when it has to do like when it's all about me, like not in a you know, prideful sense, but like when the mistake is all mine,
Yeah,
and I can recover from it. That's really easy. The hard part is when a mistake that I make affects other people. That's the
right.
ones that I really have a hard time. Not necessarily recovering from, but those are the ones that really leave an impression on me. I think I do a lot of what you do. I look at, okay, why did this happen in the first place? Like
Mhm.
where were we dropping the ball? Where, and not just what ball was dropped, because honestly, like when the mistake happens to somebody else and I'm the one overlooking at them, I never get on them for the mistake. I always go back and I look at where was the weak, you know, the weak link in the chain, because that's where the mistake happened. So you know what, man? I don't know if I have a better answer how I handle that than what you said, because that's really what I go after. I really try to dialogue with people. I will say this: I hit things straight on. I don't beat around the bush. If I drop the ball, I own it. If somebody else dropped the ball, I hold them accountable for it. If we both drop the ball, I make sure that there's a conversation about it. I think one of the biggest disservices you can do to anybody who reports to you or anybody who is underneath your authority or your influence is to not be straight up with them. Now, you need to know their personality and you need to understand who they are, and that comes with learning about who they are and taking an interest in them. But, I think the biggest thing that I've learned over time is don't try to avoid the difficult conversations. Try to approach them truthfully, gracefully, and quickly, because when you do that, you set yourself up for a much bigger win. In my most recent podcast that I do for the Church Marketing, Sucks website, the Church Marketing Podcast, I interview somebody that I actually work with, one of the pastors at a church that contracts with me. And the hope of the conversation is that we can take everything that we've learned and we can put it out there, everything that we've learned in terms of communicating, somebody who's got a marketing communications brain, communicating with somebody who has a heart for people, and shepherding the flock brain, and how we can bridge that communication gap. And one thing that I wound up saying, and I go back and listen to the podcast just to make sure that I didn't mess up or leave any mistakes or anything, like if I burp or something like that, I'll pull that out there. But one thing that I said was we've never experienced a loss, because every loss we've had has always led us to a bigger win. And I think that that's really how I try to approach it, is let's not look at this as a loss, but let's look at this as the precursor and the prerequisite that we need for a much greater win. And so the only thing that, I said I didn't have anything to add, and here I'm adding stuff. I think the significant thing that I would add, which is different from what you worded out there, or at least in addition to, is I really try to maintain a positive attitude throughout the entire thing. I really try to be peppy. I really try to look at things in a way of how will I feel about this 5 years from now, and that's the type of attitude that I try to hold inside my heart, because 5 years from now I'll probably be all cool and chill about it, which means I can be serious about it, but I can still be cool and chill about it now as well. So does that kind of help at all?
Yeah, that does. I love the staying positive stuff. That's really good. Do you ever feel like whenever you are learning from other people or other sources, do you ever feel like you need to implement everything right away? How do you go about, I know I talked about this, in my context a little bit earlier, but how do you go about implementing the things that you're learning?
Yeah, that's a good question. Now, when it comes to large-scale learning, like conferences and stuff like that, no, because I've learned myself and I understand that that's going to overwhelm me. But honestly, one thing that I'm really dealing with right now is the blogs that I read. I've got, gosh, man, I don't even know how many blogs that I try to keep up with, and I keep trying to, I keep saying, oh, I'm going to read this, oh, I'm going to read this, and I just keep bypassing certain blogs, and I'm not ready to unsubscribe yet, but that's a real struggle for me, because there's a lot of really great stuff out there, and I feel like I am doing myself, and kind of along the lines of what you talked about earlier, but I feel like I'm doing myself and my tribe a disservice when I just ignore good content. Buffer. I love Buffer, but their stuff is just so long sometimes that I can't get through it, and I feel guilty about that. So, one thing that I'm starting to do is I'm starting to build up my Pocket. I've talked about Pocket before on DAC Talk, but it's just a way for me to save everything that I find online, which I think I might want to review later. And so I've been trying to add things to my Pocket. I've been trying to organize them in a way that when I get to that phase of my career or of my building process or of my learning process, that I've got a whole bunch of really great resources already set aside, rather than feeling the need or the pressing priority that I have to learn about it right now. So that feeling that I got to learn everything right away is very much alive and well when it comes to the blogs that I select to read and choosing to actually read that content. But I'm trying to come up with a brand new process for myself to where I can tuck those things away for where I really need it. For when I really need it. So, man, we are over 60 minutes. I mean, I was confident we would get to 60 minutes tonight, but dude, we've just been cruising along. So, we're gonna cut it off here, dude. I appreciate you taking the time. I'm looking at what some people are tweeting out there, and dude, people are loving what you have to say. So, thank you so much for agreeing to do this with me, especially kind of on short notice. You're a rock star, man. People would love to be able to connect with you. So obviously you're on Twitter, and a lot of our folks are on Twitter connecting with you right now. Where else would you like to send people to, to continue this conversation about, achieving success the fastest way possible?
Yeah, just head to meikoseymour.com. All my stuff is up there, and I'd love to connect with you. And just meikoseymour.com and Twitter. I'm huge on Twitter. I love to be in a conversation with you.
Dude, what and where can they read about the brackets? Because they're going to get to your website or your Twitter bio, be like, what the heck is the bracket?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Just go to meikoseymour.com. You can read about bracketings. I think it is the first or second link that's on there. So just go ahead and read about it, and it's awesome. I'd love to talk to you more about it.
Awesome, man. Any final words as we sign off here?
Honestly, I think this is all about, how to achieve success in your business, in your online business. Learn. Always be a student, and don't. I think just even as a male, I tend to do this, and I'll make this really quick. But sometimes I can get really prideful and think, well, I know that. I don't need to listen to anybody. I don't need to read anything. No, I need to always be a student, always be growing, always filling my heart bank up with things that I'm gonna need probably here in the future. So always learn, always, always.
Heart bank, man. That's gonna be the word emerging from this DAC talk, man. It's good stuff, man. I couldn't agree with you more. Learning has been my secret to success. My business is young. But this month was by far, or actually January was my most successful month, and not trying. I'm not saying this to brag. I just want to put it out there to let people know that it is possible. But last month, I made twice as much in my business than I did in my day job back in July. And so I just want to offer that as an encouragement that it is possible. I've never worked this hard in my life, but I've continued to learn. I've continued to apply everything that I'm learning, and I'm stocking away the stuff that I can't apply just yet for the moment when I do need it. And be encouraged. Don't stop. Pursue the dream and learn, because success, it's just right around the corner if you're willing to suck up your pride and actually learn. All right, man, we're going to say farewell for now. I appreciate you. Thanks so much for taking the time, Meiko. We'll see you, man.
All right, see you. Thanks so much.
Yeah.